Leon Logothetis has lived the life of an adventurer, traveling the globe in search of people willing to demonstrate acts of kindness to one another. He has chronicled his experiences in 4 books and a TV series called The Kindness Diaries. At the core of his work is his quest to live a life of vulnerability, love, and magnificence. His life is not driven by the consumption of material items, but passing along kindnesses, some big and some simple, quiet gestures to his fellow human beings. What have the years of traveling and giving taught him? As Leon says, it has taught him that we are all the same at base. We simply just want to be seen. We simply just want to be heard. And we simply just want to be loved. Hello, and welcome to At the Podium with me, Patrick Huey. At the Podium is a multimedia platform that brings together people from a diverse background of lives, careers, and experiences who all share one thing in common. They have stepped fully into the transformative power of finding and raising their voices to make an impact on the world we live in today. At the Podium holds a space for everyone to share their stories, to be heard, and to bring us inspiration. Today, I'm thrilled to share the podium with Leon Logothetis. Before Leon became a global adventurer, TV host, motivational speaker, and best-selling author, he was living an uninspired and disconnected life as a broker in London. On the outside, it looked like he had it all, but inside, he was chronically depressed. He decided to do something radical about it, give it all up for a life on the road. He embarked on an adventure around the globe, fueled by the receiving and the giving of kindness. On his journey, he found the essence of humanity and learned about the bonds that connect people worldwide. Through kindness, he discovered that when we start to compare ourselves by our similarities instead of our differences, we start to create a brighter future. For over a decade, he has traveled to over 100 countries and to every continent. He's documented his experiences through his best-selling books and TV shows. Leon has devoted his life to inspiring the world with his message of kindness and hope. This is best shown through his hit TV show, The Kindness Diaries, now streaming on Discovery Plus. He's worked with many well-being brands and companies to ignite the spark of love, adventure, and humanity into their message and expand their global awareness. When he's not making TV shows and writing books, he's traveling around the world, speaking to schools and businesses about the power of kindness, compassion, and empathy. Leon's goal is to always make a positive impact with his work and content. Leon is also the founder of Winston Entertainment, a travel adventure television production company that produces content that highlights the good in humanity. Okay, Leon, welcome to At the Podium.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy that we have this time to talk today because I just finished reading your book, The Kindness Diaries. And I have to say, when I was reading it, I felt like this man sees and understands me because I have always had what I would describe as a wanderlust since I was 17 years old and left home for college. I didn't know that my life was going to take me around the world. But there's something in that expansiveness of experience and thought that happens when you travel outside of your prescribed zip code, you could say.
Absolutely. I think that I also have that wanderlust, clearly. And I always tell people that travel is the school of life, in the sense that we learn so much by doing exactly what you just said, by leaving our zip code. We get to meet people, we get to have experiences, we get to see the entire world and not just that small little section of the particular news station we watch or the particular place we live in. And it has taught me that we are all the same at base. We simply just want to be seen. We simply just want to be heard. We simply just want to be loved. And I would never have understood that had I not left the way I left, which clearly you have experienced as well.
Yes, I left home when I was 17 to go to college, and I'm 1,000 miles away from home. And I didn't have the language at the time to say that I was looking for something bigger and outside of myself. But looking back on that, I think, like you said, I've traveled the world, and I think we are all the same at core. I think there are definitely differences that exist within people based upon their lives, based upon their experiences. But the core of the human needs are quite similar. I think it's very important as one travels to learn to respect the differences and learn to respect the cultural norms that exist within different places. And oftentimes when you can't do that, that's when people get into trouble, I would say, when they're traveling and meeting new people.
Yeah, and I would say that when I travel, I go to specifically to a different country, I behave like a guest. I am a guest in that country. I am a guest in the homes of the people who live in that country. And when we look at it that way, it's very difficult to have any animosity with the people that we meet because we are guests. And when people come to our country, they are guests.
I want to get into your book, The Kindness Diaries. I know you've written 2 subsequent books, but this book is the anchor of your TV show on Discovery Plus. I read the first paragraph, which I'm going to share here, because when I read that first paragraph, it took my breath away. You wrote, "I wasn't sure if it was the screaming that woke me up or the rather large man standing above me, but either way, I was awake. In that moment, I realized my decision to sleep on the mean streets of Pittsburgh might not have been the wisest, but often my worst decisions had led to my greatest experiences. It was by saying yes to adventures, especially the crazy ones, that I found myself in those blood-pumping, soul-expanding moments of life." Now, you may not know this, but the whole concept of this show, this podcast, was built around saying yes to the unexpected gifts that life can sometimes drop in your lap, that people from the outside can sometimes view as sort of non sequiturs or crazy. But when you wrote that and you started your book that way, that's when I really felt you had me emotionally connected to your journey, because that's been my journey. And I think that's part of the brilliance of the book, is that people are able to sort of find themselves within that. And you encourage them to say yes to these very unexpected, sometimes harebrained schemed ideas, what may be seeming to be harebrained schemed ideas, because that's where the magic happens for them.
I mean, look, sometimes the greatest adventure begins after you say yes to something insane. I have a philosophy where I try my best to say yes to everything. Because if you say yes to everything, you literally never know where it's going to lead. And more often than not, it leads to something amazing. And if it doesn't, it leads to learning something, right? Of course, you can't say yes to absolutely everything, right? But pretty much, if you have this wanderlust spirit, if you have this like need and desire to see the world, to learn about yourself, you have no choice but to say yes. Yeah. And that opening paragraph was beautiful to hear it again, right? I mean, I wrote it, but it's just to hear it again, to hear someone else reading it to me. Yeah. I had no idea you were going to read it to me. Kind of just reminded me of and took me back to that moment in Pittsburgh that kind of shifted my life in a very, very profound way. Sleeping on the streets with Tony, the homeless man, all because I said yes. And I remember that moment so clearly. I was doing the show, and it was one of the first times where I had said to myself, I can't do this. I can't sleep on the streets of Pittsburgh. I just can't. I mean, you're insane, man. You can't do this. Don't do it. But then there was something that just kept saying to me, no, this is a perfect opportunity. Use your intuition. Lead with your intuition. Do you feel like this guy is going to protect you? Do you feel safe around him? And if the answer is yes, then you have to sleep on the streets of Pittsburgh with him. And, the camera crew left. Yes, they filmed what they filmed, but then they left, right? And I was there. And then they came back in the next morning, wondering whether or not I was going to be there or not.
Right.
So it was a very beautiful, beautiful moment for me. It really shifted who I was as a human being, to be honest.
There was a beautiful moment in the book where you talk about when you and Tony were sleeping on the streets in Pittsburgh. And he says to you after you were awake, after you woke up in the morning, that he had spent the night shooing the bugs off of you so they wouldn't wake you up and making sure that you were safe. And I thought that was really one of the most beautiful acts of kindness in the book, that this man who had really his heart and his desire to be a chef that had not worked out for many different reasons, he invites you to stay with him, and then he spends the night protecting you in the only way he knows how, which is keep the bugs off. And that literally, to me, it encapsulated the entire journey that you went on.
As you share that, I have goosebumps, because the success of the book and the success of the documentary show is because we showed the humanity of the world. And we lack so much of that humanity today, specifically if you just spend your life watching the news. If you turn off the news and you go out into the world, you see that humanity is all over the place at all times. But if you just watch the news and you just see all the darkness, it's easy to feel like there's a total lack of humanity. And that was one of the most important things of the reason for the success of the show. And I just wanted people to see the world. I wanted people to see people being good, right?
Yeah. You also talk about in the book, which I really love, that you in your life, and I think it first started when you first moved to Los Angeles and decided to walk across the US with only $5 and see how far you got on the kindness of strangers. But you say that you wanted to revolt against the predetermined structure of your life. And I want to know from you, what were those structures that you were existing within and why they stopped working for you, or if they ever did work for you?
I mean, look, the structures were about making money. The structures were about fitting into society. The structures were not what I wanted to live by. There's nothing wrong with making money. I like money. I'm sure many of us do.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong to a certain degree of fitting into society, right? But if that's our only goal and we don't try and fit into the heart and soul of who we are as human beings first, then we're going to be living fractured, broken lives. That's just a fact, right? We're going to not be following our bliss, as the guy who Joseph Campbell.
Campbell.
Yeah. So I wanted to follow my bliss to the best capacity I could. And whilst following my bliss, I wanted to share it with the world so that they could, so you guys, anyone who was watching it could be like, oh, if this guy can follow his bliss, then so can I. And if this guy is showing me that there's a different way to live and that there's a goodness out there and there's a humanity out there, then maybe I should turn the news off and stop feeding myself poison so that I think that everyone is bad and that people at the top, whoever they may be, left or right, can determine how I'm going to live my life. No, sorry.
This desire that you have in your life to pursue and to find and to highlight this profound kindness that you really can, I think you can almost only find when you really travel, when you really see what is out there. Was that in you even as a child?
I'm always asked this, that people always say to me, how did you start on this journey? And that's kind of a roundabout way of asking me the same question. Really, I started the journey because as a kid, I felt profoundly alone. I felt profoundly broken. I felt profoundly unseen. I was bullied by adults and children, believe it or not. And I just felt alone. And I had this teacher who made me feel not alone. She was kind to me. She inspired me to believe in myself. She made me feel like I had value. And I never forgot that. And that was like a witness to who I was. It was like a witness to my pain. And I read a book once by the psychologist Alice Miller, The Drama of a Gifted Child. And in it, she says that in order to have any hope of being successful as a human, not talking about being successful in making money, I'm talking about being successful as a human, you need to have a witness to your pain. like a mirror to who you are in a good way, as opposed to a mirror to who you are in a bad way. And it was that mirror of goodness that enabled me to have a distinction between the mirror of badness. And I was like, oh, hold on. I know what it feels like to feel broken. And I know what it feels due to that teacher to feel like I'm magnificent. And that saved me. And I wanted to share that with the world. I had a choice. Do I share my hateful side with you? Or do I share my good, kind, human side with you? Because I want you to feel like you have value. And I want you to feel like you are good. Like when you look at me, I want the mirror that shines back to you to be like, oh my goodness, I'm so amazing, meaning you. Like, oh, this is amazing. I have so much to give. I have so much to offer. I matter. And I would want to do for you what that teacher did for me. Does that make any sense? I felt like I was rambling a bit, but whatever.
No, it does make sense. And I have two questions. The first is, why did you feel broken and bullied as a child?
I mean, look, I just felt unseen. I was a middle child. I felt unseen. I just didn't feel like I felt like I was different. I was more sensitive. I was more heart-centered. And I just felt different. That's really what it was. And that sensitivity was taken advantage of, let's say, by kids, by teachers. They thought it was weakness, but it wasn't.
There's also something in what you say about this teacher who held up the mirror of goodness to you.
Yeah.
In the book, you talk about the power. Yes, there is a big gesture. Yes, you traveled around the world on your yellow motorcycle with the sidecar, which is a big gesture. But you also talk about in the book about the whispers, the kindness of small gestures, the kindness of the whispers of kindness. And I think about, as you describe that story about the teacher holding up the mirror of goodness, that's really where the life-changing things can really happen for people, is in the small gestures. It doesn't always have to be a huge thing that's happening. For the simple kindnesses of humanity, of witnessing another person's life or their pain, can really change a person, their entire life's trajectory, which happened for you.
What you've just said is far more important than the big gestures. Like how you show up moment to moment is far more important than doing something huge. There's no perfection. I'm not saying to anyone, and never will, that I do it perfectly. By no stretch do I do it perfectly. But it's about committing oneself to doing it as best as one can, right?
Why do you think your message of kindness has resonated so much?
Because there are lots of assholes in the world.
There really are.
Right? Sorry, but there are. And sometimes I'm one of them. That's just life. That's just what happens. Like if you're having a bad day and you do something you're not proud of. And I think it resonated because it's who we are. It's what we need. We need to be nurtured. We need to be loved. We need to feel like we have value. We need to look into the eyes of someone and feel care. We need to look into the eyes of someone and feel safety. That's just part of who we are as a species. So when there's a perceived lack of that, and you have someone who is giving it out for free, right? It makes a big difference.
I think that statement that there's so many assholes in the world. What I loved about the book and the journey was that you let us see your frustration. You let us see that, oftentimes I'm sure it's tempting for a publisher or a writer to take this kind of story and turn it into this sort of like inevitable journey of whatever it turns out to be. What I love about the book and the story and what you let us into is that there are moments when you're really upset. When you're really, like when they're holding your bike in Cambodia. Was it Cambodia? They were holding the bike. Vietnam. You got really upset. And along the way, it was very humanizing to witness a person go on this, this really difficult journey and not have it sanitized into this, well, I took a journey around the world and look what I learned. But there are really moments where you like, I love the moment when you've just left. I think you've just left the Taj Mahal and you hit the wall. Is that when that happened?
Yes.
And I thought, what a perfect metaphor for life. It's something like this where you really You have this really big, expansive moment of the Taj Mahal, this really beautiful, monument to love that the king of, or whatever they call them at the time, built for his wife who passed away in childbirth. And then you hit a wall. And I think that sort of juxtaposition and that sort of like, you have a beautiful moment and you hit a wall. You're traveling out around the world, you almost get there, and then they hold your bike. I think those things humanized the story for me and told me that this wasn't about some kind of saccharine, sweet kindness, niceness, but it's about the really profound deepness of kindness that exists in the world. And sometimes that's messy, and sometimes that's not necessarily to script.
Of course, life is messy. And I remember I would sometimes watch preachers speak, and they would seem like perfect human beings. And then weeks later, I would turn on the news and I would see all of these horrible things they were doing. And I wanted to be human. I wanted people to watch this show and see me as a human being who doesn't espouse perfection, who doesn't espouse going out into the world and being this oh, I'm the kindness guy. I don't make any mistakes. No, I don't care who you are. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone does bad things. Everyone. There isn't a single human being that hasn't made a mistake. There isn't a single human being that hasn't done a bad thing. That's just the way of the world. And if anyone is out there espousing perfection, run as fast and far away as you possibly can. There is no perfection. None. And I give speeches and I tell people on the stage, I say, look, this is the best version of Leon. If the worst version of Leon was on this stage, you would all leave. And that's the truth. They would. If sometimes people were to look into my private life and see the way I behave. I mean, look, we all behave in bad ways sometimes. And it's so important to put that out to the world. This is also who I am. And it's okay. You can do good things and you can also do not good things and still be the human being that you are meant to be.
Let me ask you this, because as I was reading the story, it occurred to me that is the journey of kindness, is this profound awakening, is this a singular journey? Meaning that, and I don't want to overstate this, but if you look at, let's say you look at Jesus Christ, right? Who went on a very profound journey of the 33 years he lived, crucifixion, the resurrection. He may have had 12 men with him, but it was still a very singular, almost lonely journey for him. And Buddha and Gandhi. And as you were going on this journey around the world and you were having the sort of push-pull that was happening at that time with Lena in the story, and questioning your own, can I make a commitment like that to someone and still be true to my dreams, my values, who I am as a person? Is the journey of kindness a singular journey to a certain extent?
Look, I think to a certain extent, all journeys are singular, right? We come into this world alone, we leave the world alone, and in between, we spend a lot of time alone, right? Even if we're around lots of people, no one can truly know what we're going through, right? And it's in those moments of connection is the closest we come to being not alone. And that's why I loved doing it, because I was not alone when I was connecting. I was not alone when I was in these amazing experiences. But you always tend to go back to that singular moment of aloneness, because that's part of the human experience. And I think we are seeking to not be alone. Mm-hmm. And by connecting, we are not alone. You're asking some very deep questions. I like them.
I think if we don't ask the deep questions, we get dictatorship. We get the killing fields, right? And so I think we have to ask the deep questions in order to get to the truth and to get to what is really motivating people, what really drives our actions. So I think that's why I ask the deep questions. And your book, your story demands that we ask the deep questions, I think.
And if you don't ask the deep questions, you don't get the opportunity to truly connect.
Right.
I feel like I'm connecting with you right now. I don't feel alone. because we're in this like field, right?
Right.
Because you're asking me deep questions. If you were asking me silly questions about, whatever, we wouldn't be connecting. We'd be like having this conversation that would be surface and, to be honest, quite pointless. But because you're asking these deep questions, we're like in this field together, this human connection, the shared humanity between us both is happening. And I don't know about you, but I don't feel alone right now. Do you feel alone?
No, I'm deep in it with you.
Okay, beautiful. And that's it. That's what the show's about. Reminding people to do that.
It's so important. I also loved the Dwight character in the book because there's a thing that I felt that was really real for me in the book, which is that, and it's almost a greeting card now, but a great journey begins with a single step. And I think you made that real for me when you meet Dwight in Hollywood, and it's so funny because in the book, you're planning for the trip. There is this tension between you and Lena about the trip. And then the day comes and you leave, and then you're like standing on the streets of Hollywood looking for gas. And like literally, it kind of made my stomach turn because I got so nervous for you standing on the streets of Hollywood asking for gas. But that's how it began. And I think it was beautiful to see how the moments of connection that you had with all the different people, that for me, Dwight, the story, how you first met, and Dwight sticks in my mind because he was the first. It all began with that single step, and all the connections that you had with Dwight and Dilip and all the amazing people that you met, and the couple that you met whose son was having the wedding, I believe in the UK, and they couldn't afford to go, and you make that happen for them. All of these people were willing to do that. And I thought there was just something really profound in, at a certain point, I stopped worrying about you on the trip because I was like, he's going to find the people who are willing. And I think everywhere there are people who are willing to connect. And I think, and it wasn't always because they gave you food or because they gave you gas money or because you could stay at their house. And they would say, listen, I can't do it, but I know someone who can. And I think there was something in those exchanges that I think was really, really important.
Those exchanges would only have been made possible by two people opening up their hearts to connect. People sometimes say, oh, well, it was very easy for you because you had a camera. Well, the camera doesn't open someone's heart. In some way, the camera closes their heart.
Right.
So, I still had to keep my heart open and hope that the person in front of me had their heart open. And only then did the magic happen.
Right. What is that tension between, I think you may have described it, I described it as the vagabond life, the wanderlust life, and then the life of living a very prescribed, well, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to high school, go to college, get married, come back to where you grew up, build your life, the picket fence, the whole thing. And there is a distinct tension that I felt in the book between the life that you were supposed to have versus the life that you desire, and the life that lights you up on the inside. What Marie Kondo, what sparks joy, right? Why is there that tension?
I think there's a tension because society tells us to do something that society wants us to do, and we want to do something that we want to do. And because they often are different, there's going to be tension.
You also talk about that having a dream means going to dangerous places within your heart. And having a dream sometimes means that things are not going to fit into your ideals or the visions that people hold of you.
What I meant by danger is that it's easy just to live on the surface of life, not to feel your pain, not to share your love, not to be vulnerable, not to seek your own magnificence, not to run the risk of being squashed emotionally. And you just sit like a machine and go through life for 87 years and then die. It's dangerous to go the other way. It's dangerous to be vulnerable. It's dangerous to live from your heart. It's dangerous to open yourself up to another human being because who knows what's going to happen? I had a girlfriend once who said to me, the risks of loving are that the other person will crush you, not physically, but, not literally. And that was very powerful because it's right. Because when you open yourself up to another human being, you run the risk of being destroyed. But if you don't open yourself up to another human being, you will be destroyed. Yeah. But there's fine lines there, because I'm not suggesting you open yourself up to all human beings, because there are some human beings that will destroy you if you open yourself up. But there are other human beings that you need to find, or that will find you, that if you open up to them, the chances of destruction emotionally, right, are far, far less. But even then, you've been in relationships, you've opened up your heart, that person is capable, because they're human and they're traumatized and they have their own issues, to destroy you, right? Emotionally. But you still have to do it. You still have to do it, because if you stop doing it, you stop living. And as I sit here and say that, I'm like relearning a lesson that I learned years ago that I kind of forgot. And it kind of, it's interesting. It's very, it's like something I'm going through right at this present moment. So it's interesting that you asked that question, or that I answered it this way.
Can miracles still happen? The book, you say, don't quit before the miracle happens. And there were several times in your journey where you were like, I'm going to have to get on a plane and go back home. And yet you persevered. Can miracles still happen? I feel like we're doomed as a society, as humanity, if miracles can't happen. But are we creating a context where the miraculous can't happen, given the sort of strife, the division, the indifference that we live with right now?
Look, if you are consumed by mass media, which most of the world is, then there is more chance of feeling doomed than if you are not. Because if you are not consumed by the messages that you receive every single day, and 99% of them are negative, right? If you are not consumed by them, you see that there is so much out there. There is so much in here. There is so much that we can connect to. There is so much goodness. There is so much magnificence. And that's what we have to concentrate on. And that's what we have to share. And that's what we have to spend our lives kind of promoting. Yeah. So to answer your question, are miracles still possible? Of course, miracles are still possible. The fact that you and I are talking, and we are not talking from our minds, you and I right now. We are talking from our hearts. We are in this field again, this like field of love. That is a miracle, right? Okay. Like I met you once before. Okay. And here we are having this beautiful conversation from our hearts. That's a miracle. Yeah. Specifically in the world that we live in right now. But it's also not a miracle. It's part of who we are as human beings, to have this experience that we are having. And hopefully people will listen to this podcast and be like, oh, those two fellows had this beautiful conversation. They were in their humanity. I'm human too. Maybe I can connect with my next door neighbor the same way. Who knows? Instead of turning on the news, I'm going to go and have a cup of tea with them. And I'm going to try and recreate this magical moment that you and I are having with my next door neighbor. That would also be a miracle. But at the same time, it's not a miracle, because it's who we are as human beings. It's what we do. Like I was in Indonesia a couple of years back, and I was driving on my Vespa, and I kept on seeing people sitting around their courtyards talking. And I was like, and in fact, I didn't know what they were doing. And I said to my friend, I said, what are they doing? And he's like, they're talking to each other. And I was like, oh, all right. That's kind of cool. So just bringing it back to like being human, being connected, forgetting about the craziness that's going on. Of course, one can't forget it because it's happening. But reminding ourselves, again, I go back to what I said at the beginning, that we're all the same, that look for the commonalities and go from here and go down here to the heart, from the head to the heart. And it's easy for someone to say, oh, go from the head to the heart, go from the head. Well, what the hell does that mean? But if you feel it, like you are clearly someone that lives from the heart. So you have a responsibility in the world. You have a responsibility to inspire people to live and to communicate from the heart. And you can do that, you specifically, by being the mirror to them. Because if you come from your heart, they will have no choice but to come from their heart. And if they don't, it's okay. You move on to the next person that does.
Let me ask you, as I was reading the book, I love the journey of it. And then I had a thought. And I thought to myself, could I today, as a Black man, do what you did, which means leave my house, no money, go on the street and ask people for kindness. And I thought, I don't know if I could, which I thought was very sad. I wouldn't have had that answer 10 years ago. I would have said, of course. But now I don't know. And it made me question, is kindness available for everyone?
That's a very profound question. And I would say that I don't know your experience. Okay. I'm an English white man, right? And that brings with it lots of privilege. And specifically when you're doing the show, it brings people to want to help you because of my accent and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to share something that I haven't shared. I'm just going to share it. You know, had you said this to me prior to the Black Lives Matter movement, prior to George Floyd, I would have said, of course you can do it. Of course you can do it. Yeah. But something awoke inside me, and I think it awoke inside many privileged people, that maybe you couldn't. And that is deeply upsetting. And that is deeply painful for me to like have that moment of awakening, to see that privilege right there, right in front of my face, right? When I look in the mirror. And I don't want to sound like a naysayer, but although I said you couldn't do it, I also believe you absolutely could do it, because I still have faith. I still have hope. And I still believe that the power of goodness will win. But yes, it was easier for me. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It was easier for me. And whilst there are some highly misguided people out there in the world, there are also some very beautiful people out there in the world that look far beyond the color of someone's skin.
Mm. And that was evident in your journey.
Mm.
Leon, thank you so much for today.
No worries. Thank you. You have great questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, your journey, your book, how you're living your life made them easy. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time, your wisdom, your journey, and your belief in the goodness of people, and that kindness still matters. I think we need that more than ever right now. That kindness does matter. Even if I don't agree with you politically or whatever, we still have to find those ways to witness each other's lives. So important.
I'd like to say one more thing. I am a believer in goodness. I am a believer in kindness, but I am also a believer in do not cross my boundaries. And if someone crosses our boundaries, kindness gets put to one side, right? So I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that you allow people to walk all over you. Absolutely not. Do not walk all over me, ever.
Yeah.
So just want to make that clear.
Right. Agreed. To those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. Use yours wisely. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you very much.